The signal traveled across empty space for 3 weeks before anyone heard it. Ambassador Rhineth watched the translation scroll across her screen again, though she had memorized every word. Her 6-fingered hands trembled as she read the desperate plea her people had sent into the void. The Quellan civilization had existed for 12,000 years without ever raising a weapon against another living being. Now they faced extinction, and the irony burned worse than the fear. "They are coming again," High Chancellor Morvain said from across the council chamber. His silver skin had dulled to gray over the past month. "Our orbital defenses cannot hold another assault. 3 colonies have already fallen silent." Rhineth looked around the Galactic Council Assembly. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated areas, all of them maintaining careful diplomatic distance from the crisis. The Peluvians whispered among themselves. The Rothans examined their data tablets. The Centaurians stared at nothing, their faces blank masks of practiced neutrality. "The Dravix horde does not negotiate," Observer Pellin stated matter-of-factly. "They conquer or they destroy. This council has no military force. We are diplomats, not soldiers." "Then what good are you?" Rhineth's voice cracked. She had broken protocol by speaking out of turn, but she no longer cared about such things. "My people are dying. Children are dying. And you sit here discussing procedures and regulations." Silence filled the massive chamber. Finally, a voice spoke from the back of the room, an area reserved for the newest council members. "We will help." Every being in the chamber turned. The human delegation stood together near the entrance. There were only 5 of them, looking small compared to some of the larger species present. Captain Owen Bradford stepped forward, his blue uniform crisp and clean. His species had joined the Galactic Council only 2 years ago, and most members still viewed them with suspicion. "The human government authorizes deployment of our defense fleet to Quellan space," Bradford continued. "We can be there in 5 days." Chancellor Morvain's eyes widened. "You would risk your ships? Your people? For a species you barely know?" "Someone has to," Bradford said simply. Observer Pellin rose from his seat, his body language screaming alarm. "With respect, Captain, humanity is too new to understand the complexities of galactic conflict. The Dravix horde commands over 300 warships. They have conquered 17 systems in the past decade. Then it's time someone stopped them." "Your species comes from Earth," Pellin said, as if the name itself was a curse. "A Class 12 death world. The Council has concerns about allowing such aggressive beings to engage in military operations." Bradford's expression did not change. Ambassador Rhineth sent a distress call. "We are answering it. Unless this council plans to physically stop us, our fleet leaves in 6 hours." The chamber erupted in voices. Some species supported the human offer. Others protested vehemently. A few simply looked afraid. Rhineth watched it all with growing confusion. She had read the files on humanity after they joined the council. Their planet was harsh beyond imagination, filled with predators and natural disasters that would kill most civilized species within hours. But they had also sent beautiful music, created stunning art, and written poetry that made her cry. They were a contradiction she could not understand. "Why?" she asked Bradford directly, cutting through the noise. "Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" Bradford met her eyes. "Because you asked for help. And because we remember what it's like to be afraid." Dr. Isla Grant stepped forward beside her captain. She was shorter than Bradford, with dark skin and kind eyes. "We bring medical supplies as well as military support. Our field hospitals can treat Quellan physiology. We studied your biology when we joined the council." "You prepared for this?" Morvain asked. "We prepare for everything," Grant said. "It's how we survived on Earth." The debate continued for another hour, but the outcome was already decided. The council could not authorize military action, but they could not prevent humanity from acting independently either. When the session ended, Rhineth found herself standing before the human delegation, struggling to find words. "I do not know if I should thank you or apologize," she admitted. "The files say your planet made you into warriors. That violence is part of your nature. I am afraid of what that means." Bradford's expression softened slightly. "Everyone is afraid of us, Ambassador. We're used to it. But fear won't stop the Dravix horde from destroying your people. Our ships will." "And after?" Rhineth asked quietly. "After the Dravix are gone, what then? Do we simply trade one threat for another?" "After," Bradford said, "we go home. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to help." Rhineth wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust these strange beings from their terrible world. But she had seen the footage of Earth. She had watched recordings of their history filled with wars and weapons and death. They smiled kindly and spoke of peace, but their hands knew how to kill. Every instinct told her that inviting them into Quellos space might save her people from the ravagers, while dooming them to something worse. But her people were dying now. And the humans were the only ones who offered to stand between her civilization and destruction. "Thank you," she finally said. "May the stars guide you safely." Bradford nodded once, then turned and left with his team. Rhineth watched them go, wondering if she would remember this moment as the day her people were saved or the day they made a deal with devils. The Galactic Council dispersed slowly, representatives murmuring to each other about the dangerous precedent being set. In 5 days, the human fleet would arrive at Quellos space. In 5 days, the galaxy would learn what deathworlders truly were. Rhineth returned to her quarters and sent a message to her homeworld, warning them that help was coming. She did not mention her doubts. Her people needed hope, even if that hope came wrapped in violence and carried by beings who had learned to survive where nothing else could. The distress call had been answered. Now they would all live with the consequences. The evacuation sirens had been wailing for 3 hours straight. Civilian transport ships fled from Quellos 3 in desperate streams, their holds packed with refugees far beyond safe capacity. Nobody cared about safety anymore. The ravagers horde had already destroyed the orbital platforms, and their landing forces were burning through the eastern continent. Every minute meant thousands more dead. Commander Alexei Romanov studied the tactical display with cold calculation. 68 ravagers warships surrounded the planet in a loose blockade formation. They were not worried about defense. Why would they be? Every species they had encountered so far either surrendered immediately or died slowly. The ravagers had no concept of a fair fight because they had never needed one. "They outnumber us badly," Lieutenant Hayes said from the weapons station. 11 to 1 if we count only capital ships. Worse if we include their fighters. "I can count," Romanov replied. His accent made the words sound harsher than intended. "What is shield status?" "All ships reporting full capacity. The Indomitable is ready for combat operations." Romanov nodded. The human fleet consisted of only 6 destroyers and 2 carriers, but they were built for war in ways the galaxy had never seen. Earth had taught humanity many lessons during its violent history. The most important lesson was this: when you are outnumbered, you attack first and you attack hard. "Captain Bradford wants to talk to them first," Hayes said with poorly disguised frustration. "Diplomatic protocols." "Captain Bradford is good man," Romanov said. "But diplomacy with ravagers is like trying to reason with Hurricane. They do not care." On cue, the communication system activated. Bradford's voice came through clearly. "Attention ravagers forces. This is Captain Owen Bradford of the Human Defense Fleet. You are ordered to cease hostilities against Quellos civilians and withdraw from this system immediately. You have 30 minutes to comply." Hayes snorted. That went well. The reply came quickly, translated by the computer into standard Galactic. "Humans, we have heard of you. Soft creatures who talk big. Run home before we add your ships to our collection." Romanov smiled without humor. "Now we fight." Bradford's voice came through the tactical channel. "All ships weapons free. Show them what soft creatures can do." The human fleet broke formation and accelerated toward the ravagers blockade at speeds that made the enemy sensors scream warnings. No civilized species flew that fast in combat. The risk of collision was too high. The margin for error was too small. It was insane. The ravagers opened fire, expecting the humans to slow down or take evasive maneuvers. Instead, the human ships accelerated harder. Point defense systems engaged, creating walls of laser fire that intercepted incoming missiles. The few shots that got through splashed harmlessly against shields that were far stronger than they had any right to be for such small vessels. Then, the humans returned fire. The Indomitable's main railgun fired a solid slug of metal accelerated to a fraction of light speed. It punched through a ravagers battleship's shield like it was not there, then through the hull, then through the ship entirely. The battleship broke in half, atmosphere venting as its crew died in seconds. "Target destroyed," Hayes reported. Reloading. Around them, the rest of the fleet engaged with similar brutality. Human missiles did not explode on impact. They burrowed into enemy ships first, then detonated inside, turning vessels into expanding clouds of debris. Laser batteries fired not at shields but at weapon systems. Surgical strikes that left enemy ships helpless. Fighter squadrons dove into Dravix formations with reckless abandon, dogfighting at ranges where a single mistake meant death. The Dravix had never faced an enemy that attacked like this. They tried to adapt, tried to match human aggression, but they had no experience with opponents who simply did not care about the danger. Within 20 minutes, the Dravix formation collapsed into chaos. "They are breaking," Romanov observed. 15 ships destroyed, 23 damaged. The rest are retreating. "Pursue," Bradford ordered. "Do not let them regroup." The human fleet chased the fleeing Dravix across the system, picking off stragglers and crippling any ship that tried to turn and fight. By the time the engagement ended, the Dravix had lost 40 ships. The humans had lost none, though several vessels reported damage to external systems. On the planet's surface, the Dravix ground forces found themselves cut off and surrounded. They had expected to fight frightened civilians or perhaps poorly trained militia. Instead, human marines dropped from orbit in armored pods, hitting the ground in the middle of enemy formations. What followed was not a battle but a demonstration of what happens when you bring primitive weapons to fight beings who evolved hunting megafauna, Lieutenant. Hayes watched the combat footage with grim satisfaction. The Marines have secured the civilian centers. Dravix survivors are requesting terms. "Tell them unconditional surrender," Bradford said, "and medical treatment for their wounded. We are not barbarians." "Sir, the Quellan government is hailing us." "They sound upset," Bradford frowned. "Put them through." Ambassador Reneth's face appeared on screen, her features twisted in an emotion the translation software labeled as horror. "What have you done?" "We saw the battle. You destroyed them. You tore their ships apart. We saved your planet," Bradford said carefully. "The Dravix forces have been eliminated or captured. Your people are safe." "Safe?" Reineth's voice rose. "We watched you kill thousands of beings without hesitation. Your ships moved like predators. Your weapons were designed to cause maximum destruction. This is what you call help?" Bradford was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was colder than before. "You sent a distress call. You asked for someone to stop the Dravix horde from killing your people. Did you expect us to defeat them with kind words and diplomatic protests? Did you think war was something clean and gentle?" "I expected mercy," Reneth said quietly. "I expected civilization. My Marines are giving medical care to wounded Dravix soldiers right now," Bradford replied. "We could have destroyed their life pods when they abandoned ship. We could have left their wounded to die. We did not. That is our mercy. That is our civilization. But do not mistake mercy for weakness. Do not ask us to fight for you and then judge us for how we fight." The transmission ended. Romanov watched his captain's shoulders sag slightly. "She does not understand," the Russian said. "None of them do. They asked for help from Deathworlders," Bradford said tiredly. "They just did not think about what that really meant. Report fleet status and begin recovery operations. And someone get me casualty reports from the planet. I want to know how many civilians we saved." 3 million, sir. Preliminary estimates say we arrived just in time. Another hour and the eastern continent would have been lost." Bradford nodded slowly. 3 million lives saved, and all the Quellans could see was the violence it took to save them. He wondered if they had made a mistake coming here. Then he thought about those 3 million civilians. Thought about the children who would grow up because his people had been willing to fight, and decided it did not matter what the Quellans thought. They had asked for help. Humanity had answered. If the galaxy wanted to fear them for it, so be it. Dr. Isla Grant carried the medical supplies through the refugee camp with practiced efficiency. Around her, Quellan civilians huddled in temporary shelters, their silver skin mottled with stress patterns that her xenobiology training helped her recognize as deep trauma. Children clung to their parents, and the elderly sat in small groups, speaking in hushed tones. They were alive, but they looked at her with barely concealed fear. A young Quellan girl approached hesitantly, her large eyes fixed on the supply crate Grant carried under one arm. The crate massed nearly 80 kilograms, according to the label. The girl's mother yanked her back with a gasp of alarm. "I apologize," the mother said in stilted standard. "She does not understand proper caution." Grant set the crate down gently. "Caution about what?" "You carry death weight like it is nothing. Your strength is frightening." Grant looked at the crate, then at the Quellan. She had not even thought about it. The gravity on Quellos 3 was roughly 70% of Earth normal, and the crate was not particularly heavy by human standards. But to these people, she might as well have been lifting a vehicle. "It's just supplies," Grant said softly. "Medicine for the sick and injured." "I meant no harm." The mother nodded but did not come closer. Grant continued through the camp, noticing how the Quellons moved away from her path. Not obviously, not rudely, but consistently. Like prey animals avoiding a predator. Ambassador Reneth found her near the medical tent an hour later. The Quellon diplomat looked exhausted, her formal robes stained with dust from the camps. "Dr. Grant, may we speak?" "Of course." Grant gestured to a quiet area away from the crowds. Reneth was silent for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I have been reading about your world. About Earth. The Galactic survey classified it as a Class 12 death world. Do you know what that means?" "I know it means Earth is more dangerous than most planets," Grant replied carefully. "More dangerous?" Reneth's voice cracked slightly. "Dr. Grant, there are only 6 known Class 12 worlds in the entire galaxy. 3 of them support life, and only 1 of those produced a sapient species. Your planet has weather systems that would destroy our buildings, animals that could kill our strongest adults, diseases that would wipe out our population. Your gravity is so high that most species cannot even stand on your surface without mechanical assistance." Grant nodded slowly. "Earth is our home. We adapted to it. That is what terrifies me," Reneth said. "You did not just adapt. You conquered it. You became the apex predators of a world designed to kill you, and now you are here, and I do not know if we made a terrible mistake. We came to help you. I know, and you did. 3 million of my people are alive because of your actions. But I watched the battle recordings. I saw how your Marines fought on the ground. They moved through enemy fire like it was nothing. They lifted debris that should have crushed them. They survived injuries that would have killed any of my people instantly." Grant had been expecting this conversation. She had prepared for it, even rehearsed responses in her mind. But standing here facing this frightened diplomat whose people had just been saved by human intervention, the rehearsed words felt hollow. "What do you want me to say?" Grant asked quietly. "Tell me that you are not monsters. Tell me that your capacity for violence has limits. Tell me that when this war is over, you will not turn those weapons on us." Grant met Reneth's eyes. "We are not monsters, but we are also not like you. Earth taught us hard lessons. It taught us that the universe is dangerous, that survival requires strength, that sometimes violence is the only answer. But it also taught us compassion. It taught us that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. It taught us that our capacity for destruction must be matched by our capacity for creation." "Your children's stories featured death," Reneth said suddenly. "I reviewed your cultural database. Your entertainment glorifies war. Your sports involve simulated combat. Your music celebrates warriors in battles. Even your concept of heroism requires conflict." "Yes," Grant admitted, "but our stories also feature sacrifice. Our entertainment shows the cost of war. Our sports teach discipline and honor. Our music mourns the fallen even as it celebrates their courage. We are complicated, Ambassador. We contain contradictions. But that does not make us evil." Reneth looked away toward the camp where human medics worked alongside Quellon doctors. A human sergeant was showing a group of Quellon children how to properly wear a safety harness, his movements careful and gentle despite his obvious strength. Nearby, a human pilot shared food rations with elderly Quellons who had lost everything in the attacks. "Captain Bradford said something during our first meeting," Reneth said. "He said you remember what it is like to be afraid." "What did he mean?" Grant considered how to explain humanity's history to a species that had never known war. "For most of our existence, we were prey. We were hunted by creatures stronger and faster than us. We huddled in caves at night while predators prowled outside. We watched our children die from disease and starvation. We fought against our own planet just to survive another day. But you became the hunters," Reneth said. "Yes, we became the hunters. We developed tools and weapons. We learned to work together. We built civilizations. But we never forgot what it felt like to be helpless. We never forgot the fear of watching our loved ones die while we could do nothing. That fear drives us. It makes us strong. But it also makes us empathetic. We help you because we remember being you." Reneth was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "What happened to the Dravix prisoners?" "They are being treated in our medical facilities. We are healing their wounded and feeding them. When this conflict is over, we will return them to their people. You show them mercy even after what they did. We show them mercy because of what they did, Grant corrected. If we become monsters to defeat monsters, then what was the point of fighting? Earth taught us how to kill, but humanity taught us when to stop. A young human Marine approached, snapping a quick salute. Dr. Grant, we have wounded incoming. Looks like some Quellan civilians were trapped in a collapsed building. They are hurt pretty badly. Grant immediately stood. Prepare surgery bay 2. Get me full bioscan readouts on all patients. She looked at Reineth. Ambassador, I hope we can continue this conversation later. Right now I have lives to save. Reineth watched the human doctor rush toward the medical tent, already calling out orders to her team. Around the camp, humans moved with purpose, their strength and endurance allowing them to work without rest. They were terrifying, yes. Their capabilities were far beyond what nature should have allowed. But they used those capabilities to heal, to help, to save. Perhaps there was hope. Perhaps these Deathworlders were not the threat she feared. Or perhaps she was just telling herself comfortable lies because her people had no other choice but to trust them. Only time would tell. The humans had saved Quellos 3. But the Dravix horde controlled dozens of systems. This war was far from over, and Reineth suspected the galaxy was about to learn many more uncomfortable truths about what it meant to ask Deathworlders for help. The war room hummed with tension as Captain Owen Bradford reviewed the latest intelligence reports. 3 more Quellan colonies had sent distress calls in the past week, and the Dravix horde showed no signs of backing down. If anything, they had become more aggressive after their defeat at Quellos 3. Warlord Thrax, the supreme commander of the horde, had reportedly sworn a personal oath to destroy the human fleet. They are calling you the Death Fleet, Commander Romanov said, reading from a translated Dravix communication. They say you fight without honor, that you use cowards' tactics. Bradford almost laughed. They say we fight without honor. The species that massacres civilians and destroys entire colonies. Different cultures have different definitions, Dr. Grant said from her position near the holographic display. For the Dravix, honor means direct confrontation. Ship to ship, warrior to warrior. They consider our hit-and-run tactics to be dishonorable. Then they can die with honor, Hayes muttered. Before Bradford could respond, the communication system activated. High Chancellor Morvain's image appeared, flanked by other Quellan officials. Captain Bradford, we must discuss your recent military operations. Bradford straightened. What about them, Chancellor? Your attack on the Dravix supply depot at Sector 7 violated the Galactic Convention on Civilized Warfare. You destroyed non-combat vessels and targeted supply lines. Yes, that is how you win a war. Morvain's skin paled. The convention specifically prohibits attacks on supply and support infrastructure. Such actions are considered barbaric and cruel. They cause unnecessary suffering. Bradford's jaw tightened. Chancellor, with respect, the Dravix horde does not follow your conventions. They do not limit their attacks to military targets. They burn entire cities. They enslave populations. They do not take prisoners. If we fight by your rules while they fight by theirs, we will lose. And if we lose, your people die. Then we will find another way, Morvain insisted. There must be diplomatic solutions, negotiated settlements, peacekeeping operations with proper oversight. There is no diplomatic solution with the Dravix, Bradford said flatly. We have tried. They have responded to every peace offer by attacking another colony. They do not want peace. They want conquest. Another Quellan official spoke up, an elder named Perrin, whose credentials marked him as a chief ethical advisor. Captain, the Galactic community has maintained peace for over 3,000 years by adhering to strict rules of engagement. We limit warfare to specific zones. We avoid civilian casualties. We negotiate truces and allow honorable surrender. These rules exist because we learned that unrestricted warfare leads only to mutual destruction. Your rules exist because every species in the Galactic community thinks like you do, Bradford countered. You are all peaceful by nature. You all value life above victory. But the Dravix are not like you, and neither are we. The war room fell silent. Grant winced. That was exactly the wrong thing to say. Then perhaps, Morvain said coldly, we made a mistake in asking for your help. Perhaps we would be better served by surrendering to the Dravix than by abandoning our principles. Bradford's expression did not change, but Grant saw his hands clench behind his back. Is that an order, Chancellor? Should we withdraw our fleet and leave you to negotiate with the Horde? Morvain hesitated. In that hesitation, Grant saw the terrible position the Quellos found themselves in. They wanted to survive. They wanted their people safe. But they also wanted to maintain their identity as a civilized, peaceful species. Accepting human help meant accepting human methods, and that was tearing them apart. "We need you," Morvain finally said. "But we need you to fight with restraint. To follow the conventions. To show the galaxy that even deathworlders can be civilized." "No," Bradford said simply. "Excuse me?" "No, Chancellor. I will not sacrifice my people's lives to make you feel better about yourselves. I will not send my Marines into unnecessary danger, to follow rules that the enemy does not respect. You asked us to stop the Dravix horde. That is what we are doing. If you cannot accept our methods, then find someone else." The connection terminated. Grant watched Bradford sink into his chair, suddenly looking much older than his 45 years. "That went well," Hayes said sarcastically. "They do not understand," Romanoff added. "They think war can be civilized. That you can kill politely." Bradford rubbed his eyes. "Get me a secure channel to Earth Command. We need to discuss our position here. And someone find me every piece of intel we have on Warlord Thrax. If the Quellos want restraint, then we need to end this war quickly. The longer it drags on, the more uncomfortable everyone becomes with our presence." Over the next 2 weeks, the situation deteriorated. The Dravix launched a massive coordinated assault on 5 Quellan colonies simultaneously. The human fleet, stretched thin, could only defend 3 of them. The other 2 fell before reinforcements arrived. 50 million Quellos died in the attacks. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Species that had remained neutral began calling for restrictions on human military operations. Some suggested that humanity should withdraw entirely, that their presence was only escalating the conflict. Ambassador Reineth stood before the council, trying to defend the human actions. But even she struggled to justify the brutal efficiency of human warfare. Then Warlord Thrax made his move. He sent a message directly to Captain Bradford, translated into standard and broadcast on open channels for everyone to hear. "Human Captain, you are the first opponent worthy of respect that we have encountered in this weak galaxy. Your warriors fight with true ferocity. Your tactics show genuine cunning. I challenge you to honorable combat. Bring your fleet to the disputed zone at Sector 12. We will meet ship to ship, warrior to warrior, and settle this war properly." Bradford read the message 3 times. It was obviously a trap. The disputed zone was far from any Quellan colonies, in an area with no strategic value. Thrax would bring overwhelming force and try to destroy the human fleet in a single decisive battle. It was also an opportunity. "What do you think?" he asked his senior staff. "It is suicide," Romanoff said bluntly.
"He will bring everything he has."
"We will be outnumbered 20-1, maybe 30-1. The Quellos want us to follow their rules," Hayes said slowly. "Ship-to-ship combat in a designated zone. No civilians involved. No infrastructure targets. It is exactly the kind of civilized warfare they approve of." Grant leaned forward. "It is also exactly the kind of fight we will lose if we hold back." Bradford nodded. "Send a reply to Thrax, accept his challenge, and prepare the fleet for full combat operations. No restrictions, no rules. If the galaxy wants to see what Deathworlders can really do, then we will show them." "The Quellos will protest," Grant warned. "Let them," Bradford said. "After we win, they can complain all they want, but they will be alive to do it." The message went out. The fleet began preparing for what would be the largest single engagement of the war. And across the galaxy, species watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as humanity prepared to show everyone what total war really meant. The medical bay smelled of antiseptic and burned flesh. Dr. Isla Grant moved between beds with practiced grace, checking on patients who should not have survived their injuries but somehow kept breathing. Humans, it turned out, were very difficult to kill. Evolution on a death world had given them redundant systems, efficient healing, and a stubborn refusal to die that frustrated their enemies and amazed their allies. Ambassador Reineth watched from the doorway, her diplomatic training warring with genuine curiosity. A young human soldier lay in one bed, his chest wrapped in regenerative bandages. According to his chart, he had been shot 4 times, suffered severe burns, and had been exposed to vacuum for nearly 30 seconds. He was expected to make a full recovery within 3 weeks. "How?" Reineth asked quietly as Grant approached. "How what, Ambassador? How does he survive that? Any Quellan with those injuries would be dead. Most species would be dead. But your soldier will walk out of here and return to duty." Grant glanced at her patient with professional detachment. Earth taught us to be resilient. Our bodies heal fast because they had to. Infections, injuries, predator attacks. Our ancestors who could not recover quickly did not survive to pass on their genes. It is not natural, Reneth said. It is perfectly natural for us. That is what you keep forgetting. We are not normal by your standards, but we are not trying to be. We are what our world made us. Rhineth moved deeper into the medical bay, stopping at a section that held Dravik's prisoners. 3 warriors lay in beds, their wounds treated with the same care given to human soldiers. One of them, his leg shattered by weapons fire, watched her approach with wary eyes. Why do you heal us? He asked in rough standard. We are your enemies. Because you are wounded, Grant replied simply, checking his IV line. Because healing people is what I do. This is weakness, the Dravik's warrior said. You should kill defeated enemies. Instead, you waste resources on their care. Grant met his eyes. If showing mercy is weakness, then I am weak. But I can live with that. Reneth noticed movement in the corner. Warlord Thrax sat alone in a secured section, his massive frame barely contained by the reinforced bed. He was the prize capture from the battle at Sector 12, taken when his flagship was boarded by human marines. The battle had been brutal and decisive. The Dravik's horde, expecting a straightforward ship-to-ship engagement, had not been prepared for human tactics that threw out every rule of civilized warfare. Human fighters had launched suicide runs to disable shield generators. Boarding parties had attacked flagships directly, something no other species considered possible. When the Draviks tried to adapt, the humans simply escalated further, using weapons and strategies that violated a dozen galactic conventions. In 6 hours of combat, humanity had destroyed or captured over 200 Dravik's warships while losing only 11 of their own vessels. It had been magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Ambassador Rhineth, Thrax said, his voice surprisingly gentle for such a large being. Come, speak with me. Rhineth hesitated, but Grant nodded permission. The Dravik's warlord was secured with restraints strong enough to hold him, though Rhineth noticed he had not tested them. He simply sat calmly, watching her approach with intelligent eyes. Why do you help them? Thrax asked. The humans. They are not like you. They do not think like you. They are predators wearing the mask of civilization. They saved my people, Rhineth said carefully. They destroyed mine, Thrax countered. In one battle, they broke the Horde's power. Centuries of conquest ended by beings who have been in space for less than a single generation. Do you hate them for it? Thrax was quiet for a moment. No, I respect them. They are true warriors. They understand what war really is. Not your civilized games with their rules and restrictions. Real war where survival is the only goal that matters. And that is honorable to you? It is honest, Thrax said. You Quellans pretend that war can be gentle, that you can kill without cruelty, that violence can be controlled and civilized. But the humans know the truth. War is horror. War is brutal. War is everything civilization tries to hide from. And because they accept that truth, they are better at it than anyone else. Reneth found herself sitting in a chair across from the imprisoned warlord. Then we were wrong to ask for their help. You were right to ask, Thrax said. You were wrong to judge them for how they answered. They came to save you, and they did, but you wanted them to save you gently. To fight your war with one hand tied behind their backs. That is not how warriors operate. Are they warriors or monsters? I cannot tell anymore. Thrax laughed, a harsh sound. Ask the 3 million civilians on Quellos 3 if the humans are monsters. Ask the children who would be dead if not for human intervention. Ask your own people who the real monsters are. The Horde killed without mercy. The humans killed efficiently. There is a difference. Later that night, Reneth found herself in the human quarters, guided by Dr. Grant. The space was functional, but lived in, with personal touches that spoke of the crew's humanity. Photos of loved ones back on Earth, books and music and art. A memorial wall with names of the fallen, each one handwritten with care. Grant pulled up a file on her tablet. You wanted to understand us. Let me show you something. The file contained poetry written by human soldiers throughout history, words penned between battles during long nights and moments of peace stolen from war. The verses spoke of loss and fear and the weight of violence. They spoke of friends lost and enemies killed. They spoke of the desire for peace and the knowledge that peace sometimes required war. We hate what we are good at, Grant said quietly. We are effective killers because Earth forced us to be. But we dream of a time when those skills are unnecessary. Every human soldier wants to go home. Every human warrior wants to put down their weapons. We fight so well because we understand the cost of fighting. Rhineth read the poetry with growing comprehension. One verse, written by a soldier during Earth's ancient wars, struck her particularly hard. We do not glory in destruction. We do not celebrate death. We carry the weight of what we must do, and we carry it forever. But we do it anyway because someone must. Because the strong have a duty to protect the weak. Because silence in the face of evil is itself a kind of evil. You are complicated, Rhineth said finally. We are human, Grant replied. We contain contradictions. We are capable of terrible violence and incredible compassion. We can destroy cities and build hospitals. We make war and dream of peace. That is what Earth made us. That is what we are. Over the following weeks, Rhineth spent time with the human crew. She watched them train with weapons that terrified her, then saw them play with rescued Quellan children with infinite patience. She observed their brutal efficiency in combat simulations, then witnessed their gentleness in medical wards. She heard them plan military operations with cold calculation, then listened to them mourn their fallen comrades with genuine grief. Slowly, understanding came. The humans were not monsters wearing masks. They were beings shaped by circumstances beyond their control, trying to do good with tools designed for harm. They were warriors who wanted to be poets, killers who dreamed of being healers, survivors who hoped their children would never need to be as strong as they had become. They were, in their own way, the most civilized beings Rhineth had ever met, because they understood the price of civilization and paid it willingly, asking nothing in return except the chance to make the galaxy a little safer for those who could not defend themselves. When Captain Bradford announced that the human fleet would begin departing as the Dravix horde sued for peace, Rhineth felt something unexpected. Not relief, but sadness. The frightening protectors were leaving, and she suddenly feared what the galaxy would face without them. The memorial ceremony took place under the twin suns of the Quellan homeworld. Thousands gathered in the central plaza, Quellans and humans standing together for the first time without fear dividing them. At the center of the plaza stood a monument, newly constructed from stone quarried from Quellos III. Names were carved into its surface. 3,417 names. Every human who had died defending a species they barely knew. Ambassador Rhineth stood at the podium, her formal robes fluttering in the gentle breeze. She had spent 3 days writing this speech, discarding draft after draft, trying to find words adequate to the moment. Now facing the crowd, she realized that no words would ever be enough. 63 days ago, she began, her voice amplified across the plaza. My people sent a distress call into the void. We were dying. Our civilization, 12,000 years old, faced extinction. And we were afraid. She paused, gathering strength. When the human fleet arrived, we were still afraid. But our fear had changed. We feared the beings who came to save us. We saw their strength and called it brutality. We saw their efficiency and called it cruelty. We saw them win battles and accused them of being monsters. High Chancellor Morvain sat in the front row, his expression unreadable. Around him, Quellan officials and citizens listened in silence. We were wrong, Rhineth said simply. We asked for help and then judged those who answered. We asked for protection and then criticized the methods used to protect us. We wanted to be saved gently, as if war could be conducted with politeness and restraint. The humans tried to explain. They told us that the Dravix horde would not respond to civilized warfare. They told us that survival sometimes requires actions that make us uncomfortable. We did not listen. She looked out at the human delegation. Captain Bradford stood with his remaining crew, their dress uniforms crisp and formal. They had lost friends and comrades, but they stood with quiet dignity, asking for nothing. 3,417 humans died defending our worlds, Rhineth continued. They died far from their home, fighting for people who feared and mistrusted them. They died so that 300 million Quellans could live, and we never properly thanked them. We never acknowledged the sacrifice they made. We were too busy being horrified by their effectiveness, too busy protecting our own self-image as civilized beings. Morvain's head lowered slightly. Other Quellans showed signs of distress, their skin patterns shifting with emotion. But I understand now, Rhineth said. I spent weeks with the human crew. I spoke with their soldiers and doctors. I read their poetry and history. I learned about Earth, the world that forged them. And I learned that humanity is not brutal by choice. They are survivors. They are beings who evolved in hell and emerged strong enough to protect others from their own versions of hell. She gestured to the monument. These names represent humans who could have stayed home, who could have said that Quellan problems were not their concern, who could have left us to face the Draviks alone while they remained safe. But they came anyway. They fought anyway. They died anyway, because they believe that the strong have a duty to protect the weak, because they remember what it is like to be helpless and afraid. The crowd was silent. Rhaenith saw tears on some faces, shame on others. Today, the Dravik's horde has formally surrendered. Warlord Thrax, the last of their great commanders, has signed a peace treaty that guarantees Quellan sovereignty and establishes humanitarian protections for all species under their control. The war is over. We are safe. And we owe that safety to beings we were too frightened to trust. She turned to face the human delegation directly. Captain Bradford, officers and crew of the Human Defense Fleet, on behalf of the Quellan people, I offer you what I should have offered from the beginning: gratitude, respect, and apology. You saved us and we made you feel like criminals for doing it. You bled for us and we questioned your motives. You showed us mercy we did not deserve. Bradford stepped forward, his expression solemn. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the plaza. Ambassador Rhaenith, we did not come here for gratitude. We came because you needed help. That is what we do. That is what humanity has always done. We remember what it is like to be afraid, to be helpless, to watch our loved ones die while we can do nothing. We swore that we would never let others suffer that way if we had the power to stop it. He looked at the monument, at the names of his fallen crew. These people died doing what was right. They died knowing the cost and accepting it. We mourn them. We will always mourn them, but we do not regret our choice to come here. We would make the same choice again. Morvain rose from his seat and approached the podium. The High Chancellor had aged visibly over the past 2 months. Captain Bradford, humanity has taught us difficult lessons. You have shown us that the universe is more dangerous than we wanted to believe. That peace is not the natural state of things, but something that must be fought for and defended. That civilization requires guardians willing to stand in the dark places. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. You have also shown us that strength and compassion are not opposites. That warriors can be gentle. That those who carry weapons can still carry hope. We asked you to save us. You did that and more. You taught us what true civilization means. The Galactic Council had sent observers to the ceremony. They stood off to the side, representatives from dozens of species, all of them watching with varying degrees of discomfort. Observer Pelin, the same official who had questioned humanity's involvement at the beginning, stepped forward reluctantly. The Galactic Council acknowledges the human contribution to resolving the Dravik's crisis, he said in the formal language of diplomatic statements. However, we must also note that human military operations violated several established conventions and protocols. Moving forward, we recommend that future interventions be conducted with proper oversight and adherence to civilized standards of warfare. The plaza erupted in angry voices. Quellans shouted at the council observer, their usual politeness forgotten. Even some of the other species' representatives looked uncomfortable with Pellin's words. Bradford held up a hand, calling for silence. When the noise died down, he addressed the council observers directly. We understand your concerns, but understand ours. The next time you have a crisis, the next time civilians are dying and diplomacy has failed, you will have a choice. You can follow your protocols and watch people die, or you can ask the Deathworlders for help. We will come. We will fight. We will win. But we will do it our way. Because our way works, he turned back to the crowd. Humanity does not want to be the galaxy's soldiers. We do not want to fight your wars. We want to go home to our families, to our peaceful lives, to our dreams of a better future. But if you call us, we will answer. Because that is who we are. Not because we love violence, but because we understand its necessity. Not because we enjoy war, but because we know the cost of failing to act. The human fleet began its departure the following day. Quellan children lined the streets, waving at the human marines as they boarded their transports. Adults who had once fled from human presence now approached to shake hands, to say goodbye, to thank them personally. It was a transformation that few had thought possible. Dr. Isla Grant found Rhaenith standing alone near the spaceport, watching the ships prepare for launch. You are staying? Grant asked. I am being assigned as permanent ambassador to Earth, Rhineth said. Someone needs to help the galaxy understand your people. To explain that deathworlders are not the threat we feared. Some will never accept us, Grant said quietly. I know, but some will, and that is a start. Rhineth turned to face the doctor. What will you do now? Go home, rest, try to forget the things I saw. And probably fail. Grant smiled sadly. Then wait for the next call, because there will be a next call. There always is. I hope not. So do I, Ambassador. So do I. 3 months later, the Galactic Council convened to discuss humanity's role in galactic affairs. The debate lasted for weeks. Some species advocated for restrictions on human military capabilities. Others argued for full integration of human forces into Council defense operations. Still others wanted nothing to do with deathworlders at all. In the end, a compromise was reached. Humanity would remain a full Council member, but would operate independently in military matters. They would be called upon only in the most dire circumstances, when civilized solutions had failed and lives hung in the balance. They would be the last resort, the option no one wanted but everyone knew they might need. The humans accepted these terms without complaint. They returned to their corner of the galaxy, to their harsh world with its dangerous wildlife and extreme weather. They went back to their lives, their families, their dreams, but they kept their fleets ready, their soldiers trained, their weapons maintained, because they knew the truth that the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Peace was not free. Safety was not guaranteed. Civilization was not the natural state of the universe, but a fragile thing that required protection. And sometimes that protection required beings who knew how to fight, who were willing to fight, and who understood the terrible price that fighting demanded. The galaxy had learned to fear deathworlders. Now slowly they were learning to trust them. Not because humans were gentle or kind or civilized by galactic standards, but because they were something more important. They were reliable. They were capable. They were willing to stand between the innocent and the darkness, asking nothing in return except the chance to make the universe a little bit safer. And when the next crisis came, when the next species sent a desperate call into the void, everyone knew who would answer. The galaxy might regret sending that SOS, they might fear what showed up, but they would survive. And sometimes survival was enough. The void of space held no mercy, and Diana Ross knew this better than most. 3 years had passed since humanity fought its way into the galactic community, and the scars still remained fresh on both sides. Her ship, the Perseverance, moved through the darkness like a silent predator, scanning the empty sectors where few dared to travel. Liam Chen broke the silence first. His voice cut through the quiet hum of the bridge systems. Captain, I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. Diana turned from the viewport where she had been watching the distant stars. Define strange. It's a distress call, but the signal is weak. Barely there. Liam's fingers moved across his console, pulling up the data. The signature matches a Pale One vessel. The mention of the Pale Ones made everyone on the bridge pause. These fragile creatures were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful beings who avoided conflict at all costs. Their skin held an almost translucent quality, and their bodies could not withstand even minor physical stress. Most species respected them for their art and philosophy. Humans found them frustrating but harmless. Can you clean up the signal? Diana asked, moving closer to the communication station. Beth Cole, their engineer, rerouted power from non-essential systems. The distress call became clearer, and what they heard made Diana's blood run cold. Screams echoed through the static. Not the sounds of system failure or natural disaster, but the unmistakable sounds of an attack. They're under fire, Alex Stone said from Tactical. His face had gone hard, the way it always did before a fight. I'm detecting weapon signatures. Multiple contacts surrounding a civilian transport. Diana pulled up the tactical display. 3 heavy cruisers orbited a single colony ship like sharks circling wounded prey. Smaller attack craft swarmed around the defenseless vessel, taking shots at its engines and life support systems. Ravagers, Liam said quietly. Everyone knew what that meant. The ravagers were a species that built their entire civilization on the suffering of others. They captured weaker races and sold them as slaves across the black markets of the outer territories. The Galactic Council condemned them publicly, but did little to stop them. Most species simply avoided the sectors where ravagers operated. How many people are on that transport? Diana asked. Ray Foster, their medical officer, accessed the ship's registry. According to the database, that class of vessel carries between 2,000 and 3,000 passengers, mostly families relocating to a new colony. 3,000 innocent people being hunted for sport and profit. Diana felt her jaw tighten. She knew what the regulations said. Human vessels were not authorized to interfere in conflicts involving other species. The Galactic Council had been very clear about that after the war. Humanity's reputation as violent deathworlders meant they were watched closely, their every action scrutinized. "Captain, we're the only ship in range," Liam said, reading her thoughts. "The nearest Galactic Council patrol is 6 hours away." "Those people don't have 6 hours," Alex added. "From the damage readings, that transport's hull will breach in less than 30 minutes. Diana looked at her crew. These were people she trusted with her life. People who had followed her through the hell of first contact and the brutal war that followed. She saw the same conflict in their eyes that burned in her chest. The right thing to do was obvious. The legal thing to do was walk away. "Beth, I need everything you can give me from the engines," Diana said, making her choice. "Alex, start running attack patterns. I want solutions for taking out those cruisers." "We're really doing this?" Liam asked, though his hands were already plotting an intercept course. "We're really doing this," Diana confirmed. "Ray, prepare sickbay for potential casualties." "Both ours and theirs." The Perseverance changed course, accelerating toward the distant battle. Diana opened a channel to the Pale One transport, hoping they still had communications. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Diana Ross of the United Earth Space Navy ship Perseverance. We have received your distress call and are responding." "Hold on." The response came after a long pause. The voice was weak, trembling with fear. "Human vessel, this is Elder Whisper of the colony ship Harmony. We did not expect anyone to answer. Especially not your kind." The word stung, but Diana understood. Humans terrified most of the galaxy. Stories of their ferocity in battle had spread far and wide. To the Pale Ones, being rescued by humans might seem only marginally better than being captured by ravagers. "Elder Whisper, we're coming to help whether you want us to or not. Keep your people away from the hull breaches and shut down all non-essential systems. We'll be there in 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Whisper's voice cracked. "But the distance is... We're human," Diana said simply. 10 minutes. She cut the channel and turned to her crew. They were pushing the engines beyond safe limits, subjecting themselves to G-forces that would kill most species. But humans came from Earth, a world that had tried to murder them for millions of years. Their bodies were built to survive what should not be survivable. "Ravagers are hailing us," Liam said. "They want to know our intentions." "Tell them to surrender and leave immediately," Diana ordered. "Tell them if they fire one more shot at that transport, we will show them exactly why the galaxy fears humanity." Alex pulled up the weapon systems, charging every gun they had. "They're not leaving, Captain. They're moving to intercept us." Diana allowed herself a cold smile. "Then let's give them a reason to regret that decision. All hands, battle stations. Time to remind the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocence in human territory." The Perseverance raced toward the battle, and Diana felt the old familiar feeling wash over her. Fear, yes, but also purpose. This was what humanity did best. They ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. They fought when fighting seemed hopeless. They protected the weak, even when the weak feared them. The Ravagers were about to learn a harsh lesson. The galaxy already feared humanity. Now they would understand why. Space erupted in fire and light as the Perseverance dropped out of faster-than-light travel, directly into the combat zone. The Ravager cruisers had not expected such an aggressive approach, and their formation scattered in confusion. Alex Stone did not waste the opportunity. His fingers flew across the tactical console, designating targets and firing solutions with the precision of someone who had spent too many years at war. Firing main batteries. The ship's primary weapons spoke with thunder that would never be heard in the vacuum of space. Magnetic accelerators launched tungsten slugs at a fraction of light speed, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through armor plating like it was paper. The closest Ravager cruiser took 3 direct hits to its port side, and atmosphere vented into space as the hull ruptured. "Direct hits on target 1, Alex reported. "Their shields are down and they're listing badly." Diana gripped her chair as the ship banked hard, avoiding return fire from the other 2 cruisers. The inertial dampeners could only do so much, and she felt the G-forces pressing against her chest. Most alien species would have blacked out by now. Humans just gritted their teeth and kept fighting. Beth, how are we holding up? Diana called out. From engineering, Beth's voice came through strained but steady. Shields are at 70% and dropping. That last barrage hit us pretty hard, but I can keep us in this fight. Liam pulled up a tactical display showing the battlefield. The Harmony sat dead in space, its engines completely disabled. Ravager strike craft swarmed around it like insects, occasionally firing at the transport to keep the Pale Ones terrified. The two remaining cruisers were moving to flank the Perseverance, trying to catch it in a crossfire. They're trying to box us in, Liam warned. Let them try, Diana said. Alex, pattern Delta 7. Alex nodded and began executing one of the more insane maneuvers in the human tactical playbook. The Perseverance accelerated directly toward the nearest cruiser, weapons blazing. The Ravagers, thinking the humans were making a suicide run, held their position and concentrated their fire on the approaching ship. At the last possible second, Beth cut the main engines and fired the maneuvering thrusters at full power. The ship twisted in space, presenting its dorsal armor to the enemy fire, while its ventral weapons tracked the cruiser they had just passed. The maneuver subjected everyone on board to forces that would have torn apart most alien vessels and killed their crews. The Perseverance's weapons raked the Ravager cruiser from stern to bow, finding weak points in the armor that human intelligence had identified during previous encounters. One shot penetrated deep into the ship's interior, and a chain reaction of explosions tore through the vessel. It broke apart, pieces tumbling through space. Target 2 destroyed, Alex said with grim satisfaction, but victory came with a price. The third cruiser had used the distraction to position itself perfectly, and its weapons poured fire into the Perseverance's weakened shields. Alarms blared across the bridge as systems failed. Shields are down, Beth shouted. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Emergency force fields are holding, but we can't take many more hits like that. Diana was about to order another attack run when Liam's console erupted with new contacts. Captain, multiple jump signatures detected. I'm counting 8 new contacts entering the system. Everyone's heart sank. If the Ravagers had called for reinforcements, the fight was over. The Perseverance could not handle 8 more enemy ships, not in its current condition. But then Alex looked at his tactical display and his expression changed from despair to something like wonder. Captain, those aren't Ravagers. Those are ours. 4 warships materialized from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Diana recognized their signatures immediately. The destroyer Defiant, smaller but faster than the Perseverance. The frigate Relentless, bristling with missile pods. The carrier Yorktown, already launching fighter craft. And leading them all, the dreadnought Indomitable, a ship so massive it seemed to warp space around it. This is Admiral Grace Warner of the UESN Indomitable to all vessels. A voice came over the open channel. The Perseverance is no longer alone. Ravager vessels, you have 10 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. The Ravager commander apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor. His voice came through, speaking in broken but understandable human language. Human fleet, we mean no harm. This is simple business. We will leave this sector and forget this incident. Admiral Warner's response was ice cold. You attacked civilians. You terrorized innocents. You fired on a human vessel. There is no leaving. There is no forgetting. Destroy them. What happened next was not a battle. It was an execution. The human fleet moved with coordinated precision that spoke of countless hours of training and combat experience. The Ravagers tried to run, but human ships were faster. They tried to fight, but human weapons were deadlier. They tried to surrender, but humanity had no mercy for slavers. Inside the Harmony, Elder Whisper watched the battle through the transport's damaged sensors. His people huddled around him, too afraid to look away. They had heard stories of human brutality, but seeing it firsthand was different. The humans fought with a savage efficiency that bordered on artistic. Every shot had purpose. Every maneuver had meaning. But what terrified Whisper most was not the violence itself. It was the cold calculation behind it. The humans were not fighting in a rage. They were executing a plan, eliminating threats with the same methodical approach they might use to solve a mathematical equation. This was not chaos. This was controlled, directed fury. The last Ravager cruiser tried to flee, its engines burning at maximum power. The Defiant pursued, matching its speed easily, and fired a spread of missiles that overwhelmed the cruiser's point defense systems. The enemy ship disappeared in a flash of light and debris. Silence fell over the battlefield. Where minutes before there had been chaos and fire, now there was only wreckage and the quiet hum of human ships taking up defensive positions around the Harmony. Perseverance. This is Admiral Warner. Status report. Diana took a breath, steadying herself. We're damaged but functional, Admiral. No casualties. Thank you for the assist. When we picked up your distress relay and saw you were engaging superior forces, we came as fast as we could, Warner said. You know humans don't abandon their own. Now let's get these people to safety. Ray Foster was already preparing medical teams to transfer to the Harmony. The Pale Ones would need help, both physical and psychological. Being caught between ravagers and humans had probably traumatized them beyond measure. Diana opened a channel to the transport. Elder Whisper, this is Captain Ross. The threat has been neutralized. We're sending medical teams to assist your wounded. There was a long pause before Whisper responded. When he did, his voice shook. Captain Ross, thank you. But we must ask, why did your people come? Why did so many ships respond to save us? Diana thought about the question. The simple answer was that it was the right thing to do. But there was more to it than that. Humanity had spent millions of years learning to survive on a planet that wanted them dead. They had learned that survival meant working together, protecting the weak, standing against threats no matter the cost. Because that's what we do, Diana said simply. We heard your call and we came. That's all you need to know. Admiral Grace Warner reviewed the battle reports in her ready room aboard the Indomitable and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. 0 human casualties, minimal ship damage, and 3,000 civilians saved. By any measure, this was a successful operation. The Galactic Council would not see it that way. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Enter. Diana Ross walked in, her uniform still showing scorch marks from the brief fire that had broken out on the Perseverance during the battle. She saluted sharply and Grace returned it before gesturing to a chair. How's your ship, Captain? Beth says we'll be back to full operational status in 48 hours, Diana replied. The damage looks worse than it is. How long until the Council starts screaming at us? They already have, Grace said, pulling up a screen showing dozens of urgent messages. The Collective is demanding we be censured. The Assembly wants us expelled from Council space. Even some of our supposed allies are questioning whether we had the right to intervene. Diana's expression hardened. We saved 3,000 people from slavery and death. What right do they need beyond basic decency? The Council doesn't see it that way, Grace explained. They see a human battle group destroying 8 ships without provocation or authorization. They see us acting unilaterally in territory that isn't ours. They see the monsters from their nightmares proving once again that we're too dangerous to be trusted. Before Diana could respond, Liam's voice came through the communication system. Admiral Warner, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting your presence at an emergency session in 2 hours. Grace and Diana exchanged looks. 2 hours was barely enough time to prepare a defense, and that was probably intentional. The Council wanted to catch humanity off guard, force them to react emotionally rather than strategically. Tell them I'll be there, Grace said. She turned to Diana. I want you there too. And bring Elder Whisper. The Council needs to hear from someone we saved. An hour later, the quantum communication link established a real-time connection between the Indomitable and the Council chambers on the station called Unity, thousands of light years away. The holographic projection made it seem as if Grace and Diana were standing in the chamber itself, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species. The Council speaker, a member of the diplomatic race known as Voices, began the proceedings. Admiral Warner, Captain Ross, you stand accused of unauthorized military action, excessive use of force, and violation of interspecies conflict protocols. How do you answer? Grace stepped forward, her posture military straight, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in desperate battles. I answer that we saved 3,000 innocent lives while your council debated procedure. I answer that we stopped slavers who operate freely because the council lacks the will to act. I answer that if these are crimes, then humanity is guilty and proud of it. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several species demanded immediate sanctions. Others called for humanity to be restricted to their home system. The speaker struggled to restore order. A representative from the Collective, a species that had fought humanity during first contact, rose to speak. The humans prove once again that they are violent primitives. They destroy without thought, kill without remorse. 8 ships, Admiral Warner. 8 ships reduced to debris. How many people died because of your actions? Slavers died, Grace said coldly. Predators who make their living from the suffering of others. Yes, we killed them. We killed them quickly and efficiently because that's what needed to be done. If the Council had been doing its job, we wouldn't have needed to. You have no authority to make such judgments, the collective representative shot back. The Council exists to mediate conflicts, to find peaceful solutions. Diana could not stay silent any longer. While you mediate, people die. While you debate, children are sold into slavery. The ravagers didn't attack that transport to negotiate. They attacked to capture and exploit. Where was the Council then? Where were your peacekeepers and mediators? Before anyone could respond, a new figure appeared in the chamber. Elder Whisper, transmitted from the Harmony, materialized next to the human officers. His translucent form trembled and his voice was soft. But everyone listened. Honored Council, I am Elder Whisper of the Pale Ones. I speak for the 3,000 souls who would be dead or enslaved if not for these humans you condemn. He paused, gathering courage. My people have always feared humans. We called them Deathworlders, monsters, barely civilized primitives. When we saw their ship approaching, we feared we were trading one horror for another. The chamber fell silent. Whisper continued, his words careful but firm. But I have seen what humans truly are. Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are terrifying in combat. But they are violent in defense of the weak. They are terrifying to those who prey on innocence. They came when no one else would. They risked their lives for people who feared and despised them. Is this the behavior of monsters? Several council members shifted uncomfortably. A representative from the victim species called the Wanderers spoke up. Elder Whisper, we understand your gratitude, but the Council must consider the broader implications. If we allow humans to act unilaterally, what stops them from deciding other actions are justified? Today they save civilians. Tomorrow they might invade a sovereign system claiming humanitarian reasons. Grace turned to face the Wanderer representative directly. You want guarantees? Fine, here's mine. Humanity will continue to respond to distress calls. We will continue to fight slavers, pirates, and anyone who targets civilians. We will not ask permission, we will not wait for Council approval, and we will not apologize for saving lives. If that makes us dangerous, then the Council should fear what it has become more than what we are. The speaker attempted to restore order again as the chamber descended into chaos. Some species applauded Grace's words. Others looked horrified. The fundamental divide was clear. Some species wanted order and procedure above all else. Others wanted protection and justice, even if it came from the hands of those they feared. Finally, a representative from the Keepers, one of the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy, spoke. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. Perhaps the question we should ask is not whether humanity had the right to act, but why they felt they had to. The Ravagers have operated in our space for decades. We all know they exist. We all know what they do. Yet we do nothing because confronting them would be messy, violent, and complicated. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various representatives. Humanity has shown us a mirror, and we do not like what we see. They are willing to fight and die for strangers. Are we? The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. The truth was, most species were not willing. They preferred the safety of neutrality, the comfort of diplomatic solutions, even when those solutions left the weak to suffer. The speaker finally spoke again. This matter requires further deliberation. The Council will vote on appropriate actions regarding humanity's status within our community. Admiral Warner, Captain Ross, you are dismissed. As the quantum link disconnected, Grace and Diana found themselves back on the Indomitable's bridge. Around them, the fleet maintained its protective formation around the Harmony. That could have gone better, Diana observed. That could have gone worse, Grace countered. We knew there would be consequences. But those 3,000 people are alive, and that's what matters. Liam approached with a datapad. Admiral, we're receiving messages from multiple sources. Some are condemnations as expected, but others are different. He showed them the screen. Requests for aid, pleas for protection, offers of alliance. Species that had suffered at the hands of predators and found no help from the Council were reaching out to humanity, asking if what Elder Whisper said was true, asking if humans really would protect those who could not protect themselves. Grace looked at the messages, understanding the weight of what was happening. Humanity was being offered a choice. They could step back, return to their isolated corner of space and avoid the complications of galactic politics. Or they could step forward and accept the burden of being protectors in a galaxy that feared them. Send a reply to all of them, Grace ordered. Tell them yes. Tell them if they call, we will answer. Ray Foster moved through the medical bay of the Harmony with practiced efficiency, treating wounds that ranged from minor cuts to severe trauma. The pale ones flinched every time he approached, their translucent skin flushing with colors that indicated fear. He had learned to move slowly, to speak softly, to make himself as non-threatening as a human could be. The youngest patient, a child barely old enough to understand what had happened, whimpered as Ray examined a fractured arm. Her mother held her close, watching the human doctor with wide, terrified eyes. It's just a simple fracture, Ray explained, keeping his voice gentle. I'll set it and apply a regenerative cast. She'll be fine in a few days. The mother nodded but did not relax. Ray understood. To her, he was only slightly less frightening than the ravagers who had attacked them. She had watched humans kill with efficient brutality. Now one of those same creatures was touching her child. The cognitive dissonance must be overwhelming. Beth Cole worked nearby, helping repair the transport's damaged life support systems. A group of Pale One engineers watched her work, fascinated and horrified in equal measure. She made repairs that should have required specialized tools using improvised solutions and sheer determination. At one point, she reached into an exposed power conduit that was still partially active, her body absorbing electrical current that would have killed any of them. How do you do that? One of the engineers finally asked, his voice trembling. Beth pulled her hand out and flexed her fingers, which showed only minor burns. Humans are pretty good conductors, and our nervous system can handle a lot of shock. It's not comfortable, but it gets the job done. She saw their expressions and tried to lighten the mood. Don't worry, I won't ask any of you to try it. Her attempt at humor fell flat. The engineers backed away, reassessing everything they thought they knew about the physical limits of living beings. On the Perseverance, Elder Whisper walked through the corridors accompanied by Diana. The human captain had invited him to tour the ship, hoping to build some understanding between their peoples. So far, it was not going well. Every aspect of the ship seemed designed to remind Whisper how alien humans were. The gravity was higher than what Pale Ones preferred, making each step an effort. The corridors were narrow and efficient rather than spacious and comfortable. The lighting was harsh and bright. Even the air had a quality to it that spoke of a world much different from his own. They entered the mess hall where off-duty crew members were eating and relaxing. Whisper watched as Alex Stone laughed at something another crew member said, his face animated and friendly. This was the same man who had calmly destroyed 3 ships and killed hundreds of beings just hours earlier. The contradiction was disturbing. You seem troubled, Elder, Diana observed. Whisper struggled to find the right words. I am trying to reconcile what I see with what I know. Your people are capable of such terrible violence, yet here you are sharing meals and making jokes. How do you separate the two? Diana considered the question as she guided him to a quiet corner of the mess hall. We don't separate them. They're both part of who we are. Humans are social creatures, Elder. We form bonds, we care for each other, we find joy in simple things. But we also come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. She pulled up an image of Earth on a nearby screen. Whisper looked at the blue and green planet with its swirling white clouds. It looked beautiful. Peaceful, even. Our world doesn't look dangerous, Diana continued. But it is. Storms that can destroy cities. Predators that can kill with a single bite. Diseases that can wipe out entire populations. Earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts. For millions of years, everything on Earth was trying to kill us. We survived by becoming adaptable, resilient, and yes, violent when necessary. Whisper listened, but still looked confused. Diana tried another approach. Let me ask you something, Elder. If someone threatened your family, what would you do? I would seek help from the authorities, Whisper said immediately. I would appeal to reason and law. And if there were no authorities? If reason and law couldn't save them? If the only choice was to fight or watch them die? Whisper was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke quietly. I would fight. But I would die quickly. My people are not built for combat. Exactly, Diana said. You have the will to protect those you love, but not the capability. Humans have both. That's what makes us dangerous, but it's also what makes us who we are. We fight because we can. And we can Because we had to learn how to survive. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the bridge. Liam's voice came through the communication system. Captain, you need to see this. The council vote is complete. Diana and Whisper made their way to the bridge where the crew had gathered around the main display. The results of the council vote appeared on screen, and the outcome was closer than anyone had expected. Humanity was not expelled from the council. They were not even formally censured. Instead, by a narrow margin, the council had passed what they called the Deathworld Protocol. Human vessels were granted limited authority to respond to distress calls and combat acts of piracy, slavery and genocide within designated sectors, but the victory was hollow. The vote had revealed deep divisions within the galactic community. Many species had voted to restrict humanity severely. Others had abstained, unwilling to take a stand either way. Only a handful had voted in full support of human actions. We're on probation, Alex said bitterly. They're watching to see if we'll abuse this authority. Of course they are, Diana replied. They're terrified of us. This is their way of keeping us on a leash while still benefiting from our willingness to do what they won't. A private message appeared on Diana's console, marked urgent and encrypted. She opened it and her expression changed from frustration to surprise. It's from the Pale One government, she said. They're requesting a formal meeting. 3 days later, Diana found herself in a conference room aboard a Pale One diplomatic vessel. Elder Whisper sat across from her, along with several other members of his species' leadership council. The atmosphere was tense. Captain Ross, Whisper began, my government has asked me to present a proposal to humanity. We have observed your people closely over these past days. We have seen your violence and your compassion, your strength and your gentleness. We have debated long into the night about what you represent. He paused, seeming to gather his courage. We wish to propose a defense pact between our peoples. Diana stared at him, certain she had misheard. You want an alliance with us? We want protection, Whisper corrected. The Council has failed us repeatedly. The ravagers are not the only threat we face. There are others who see our weakness and would exploit it. We need strong allies, and there is no stronger force in the galaxy than humanity. Another council member spoke up. We will not pretend we are not afraid of you. Your capacity for violence terrifies us, but we have learned something important. There is a difference between those who are dangerous and those who are evil. The ravagers are evil. They harm without purpose beyond their own benefit. You are dangerous, but your danger is directed at those who threaten innocence. Diana thought about the weight of what they were offering. An alliance with the Pale Ones would have far-reaching implications. It would formally establish humanity as protectors of weaker species. It would make them targets for anyone who opposed the new order. But it would also give legitimacy to what they were already doing. I'll need to present this to my superiors, Diana said carefully. But I think they'll agree. On one condition. Name it, Whisper said. No more calling us monsters. No more treating us like we're barely civilized primitives. We're different from you, yes. We're dangerous, absolutely. But we're people just like you. Respect that and we'll protect you with everything we have. Whisper met her eyes, and for the first time since they met, Diana saw something other than fear in his expression. She saw hope, and perhaps the beginning of understanding. Agreed, Whisper said, extending his hand in the human gesture of agreement he had learned. May this be the first of many alliances between our peoples and those who need protection from the darkness. Diana shook his hand gently, mindful of his fragile physiology. As she did, she realized that something fundamental had shifted. Humanity was no longer the feared outsider. They were becoming something new. Protectors. Guardians. The shield between the weak and those who would prey upon them. The galaxy already feared humanity. Now some would learn to be grateful for that fear. The journey to the nearest safe port would take 5 days, and Elder Whisper used every moment to observe the humans who had saved his people. Diana had granted him full access to the Perseverance, hoping that familiarity would replace fear. So far, the results were mixed. Whisper found himself in the observation deck, watching the stars drift past as the ship traveled through normal space. The Pale Ones believed space travel should be a time of meditation and reflection. Humans apparently believed it should be a time of physical torture. Alex Stone was demonstrating this theory by performing something called exercise. He moved through a series of movements that pushed his body to its limits, lifting heavy weights and running on a machine that went nowhere. His muscles strained, sweat poured down his face, and he looked like he was suffering. Yet when he finished, he smiled. "Why do you do that to yourself?" Whisper asked, genuinely confused. Alex grabbed a towel and wiped his face. "Keeps me sharp. Humans need physical activity or our bodies start to break down. Plus, it feels good to push yourself." "It looks painful." "It is," Alex admitted. "That's part of the point. Pain tells you you're alive, that you're growing stronger. On Earth, if you didn't stay strong, you died. That instinct doesn't go away just because we're in space." Beth Cole entered the observation deck carrying a portable computer pad. She was reviewing system diagnostics, making notes about repairs that needed to be completed. Whisper noticed she had been working for nearly 20 hours without rest. "Do you not sleep?" he asked her. Beth looked up, surprised by the question. "Eventually, yeah. But there's work to do first. The ship needs to be ready in case something happens. Can't really relax until I know everything's working properly. But you are exhausted. I can see it in your movements." "Sure," Beth shrugged. "But exhausted and functional is better than rested and dead. That's just how humans think. We push through because we have to." Whisper was beginning to understand something fundamental about these beings. Every aspect of human behavior seemed rooted in survival. They exercised to stay strong. They worked when tired because threats did not wait for convenience. They bonded with each other because isolation meant death. Everything they did was a response to millions of years of barely surviving on a world that wanted them gone. Later that evening, Whisper joined the crew for their meal period. He had been eating alone in his quarters, but Diana had invited him personally, and refusing seemed rude. The mess hall was crowded and loud, full of humans talking and laughing as they ate. Ray Foster waved him over to a table where several crew members had gathered. They made room for him, adjusting their behavior in small ways to accommodate his presence. They spoke more quietly. They moved more carefully. They were trying to make him comfortable, even though it clearly did not come naturally to them. "How are your people doing, Elder?" Ray asked. "Anyone still need medical attention?" "Everyone is recovering well thanks to your care," Whisper replied. "Though many are still frightened." "Frightened of what?" Beth asked around a mouthful of food. "The ravagers are gone." "Frightened of you," Whisper said honestly. He saw their expressions change, saw the hurt that flickered across their faces before they hid it. "I apologize. I do not mean to offend, but you must understand how we see you. Your capacity for violence is beyond anything we can comprehend." Alex set down his fork. "We know how the galaxy sees us, violent, savage, barely civilized. We've heard it all before." "Then help me understand differently," Whisper pleaded. "Help me see what I am missing. Because when I watch you destroy ships without hesitation, I see monsters. But when I watch you laugh with your friends and care for your injured, I see something else entirely. How can you be both?" The table fell silent. The humans exchanged glances, having a conversation with their eyes that Whisper could not follow. Finally, Diana spoke. "Let me show you something," she said, pulling up an image on her personal device. It was a picture of a woman and two small children, all smiling at the camera. "This is my family, my sister and her kids. They live on a colony world called Haven's Rest. It's peaceful there, safe. They've never had to fight for anything." She swiped to another image, this one showing a younger Diana in military uniform, covered in dust and blood, standing among ruins. This was taken during the First Contact War. I was part of the ground assault on the Collective's forward base. I killed a lot of people that day. Had to, or they would have killed me and everyone I was trying to protect. She looked at Whisper directly. "I am both of these people. I'm the aunt who sends birthday presents and tells silly jokes. I'm also the soldier who will burn worlds to protect what I love. Every human is like this. We're not monsters or saints. We're survivors who learned that sometimes survival requires terrible choices." Beth pulled out her own device, showing pictures of her family back on Earth. Parents, siblings, nieces, and nephews. "I joined the Navy because I'm good with machines and the pay helps support my family. But I'd burn this ship down to nothing if it meant they stayed safe. That's not evil. That's love expressed through the skills I have." Alex showed a picture of a man in a wheelchair. "My brother. He was hurt in an accident when we were kids. Can't walk. Probably never will. When the ravagers attacked that transport, all I could think about was him. Helpless people being hunted by predators. That's why I fight. Not because I enjoy killing, but because I can't stand the thought of innocent people suffering." Ray added his own images to the collection. "I became a doctor because I hate seeing people in pain. But I also trained in combat medicine because sometimes the only way to stop pain is to stop the people causing it. Human morality isn't complicated. Protect the weak, punish the predators. Everything else is just details. Whisper looked at the images, at the faces of families and loved ones. He finally understood what he had been missing. Humans were not violent because they enjoyed it. They were violent because they loved fiercely and were willing to do anything to protect what they loved. On my world, Whisper said quietly, we have never had to make such choices. Our planet is gentle. Our evolution was peaceful. We developed intelligence and society without the constant threat of death. When we reached the stars, we assumed all intelligent life would be like us. Reasonable, peaceful, civilized. He looked around the table at these strange, terrifying, gentle beings. We were wrong. The galaxy is full of predators. We had no defense against them because we never needed one. The Council promised protection, but protection requires force, and force requires those willing to use it. That's where humans fit. You're the universe's answer to predators. You're what evolution creates when survival requires both intelligence and ferocity. Diana nodded slowly. We didn't ask to be this way. Given the choice, most humans would prefer a peaceful galaxy. But peace is something you have to fight for, and we're very good at fighting. There is one more thing I must understand, Whisper said. When you destroyed those Ravager ships, you showed no mercy. You killed them all. How do you live with that? The humans were quiet for a moment. Alex finally answered. We don't lose sleep over killing Ravagers any more than we'd lose sleep over killing a disease. Some things are just evil, plain and simple. Slavers fall into that category. You show them mercy, and they use it to hurt more innocents. So we don't show mercy. We end the threat permanently. But where does it stop? Whisper asked. How do you decide who deserves mercy and who deserves destruction? That's the hard part, Diana admitted. That's what keeps us up at night. That's why we have laws and rules and codes of conduct. That's why we debate and argue and question ourselves constantly. Being powerful and violent doesn't mean being careless or cruel. It means being responsible for when and how we use that power. Beth added, the Ravagers chose to attack civilians. They chose to traffic in suffering. They made themselves targets. If they had left that transport alone, they'd still be alive. We don't hunt people down for existing. We respond to threats against innocence. That's the line. Whisper sat back, processing everything he had learned. The humans were watching him carefully, waiting to see if he understood or if he would retreat back into fear and prejudice. I think, Whisper said slowly, that the galaxy has made a fundamental error in how it views humanity. We called you Deathworlders as an insult, implying you were primitive and savage, but Deathworlds forge strength. They create beings who understand the value of life because they have fought so hard to preserve it. You are not monsters. You are what monsters fear. The human smiled at that, and Whisper felt something shift in his chest. The fear was still there, probably always would be. But now it was joined by something else. Respect, gratitude, and perhaps the beginning of trust. 3 months after the rescue of the Harmony, the galaxy had changed in ways nobody had predicted. Admiral Grace Warner reviewed the reports coming in from across known space, and each one painted the same picture. The balance of power was shifting, and humanity stood at the center of that shift. The Pale Ones had formally signed their defense pact with humanity, but they were no longer alone in seeking human protection. The Wanderers, a nomadic species frequently targeted by pirates, had requested a mutual defense agreement. The Builders, whose trade routes were constantly threatened, had offered exclusive contracts in exchange for human escort services. Even the Singers, who had previously wanted nothing to do with humans, had quietly sent diplomatic feelers about possible cooperation. Not everyone was pleased with these developments. In the council chambers on Unity Station, tensions ran higher than they had in decades. Species that had grown comfortable with the status quo saw their influence eroding. Those who had profited from the weakness of others suddenly faced consequences. The galaxy was being forced to choose sides. Diana stood on the bridge of her new command, the UESN Guardian. The ship was larger than the Perseverance and specifically designed for rapid response missions. Faster engines, heavier armor, more weapons, and expanded medical facilities. It was a ship built for exactly one purpose: answering distress calls that nobody else would answer. Her old crew had volunteered to transfer with her. Liam Chen was her first officer, running operations with his usual quiet efficiency. Beth Cole had designed half the Guardian systems personally, ensuring they could be repaired in the field under combat conditions. Alex Stone commanded the tactical division, training a new generation of human officers in the art of controlled aggression. Ray Foster oversaw the medical bay, which was equipped to handle casualties from dozens of different species. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission," Liam reported. "It's Elder Whisper." Diana smiled and accepted the call. Whisper's face appeared on screen, and she was pleased to see he no longer flinched when looking at humans. 3 months of working together had built genuine friendship between them. "Elder, good to see you. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to inform you before the public announcement," Whisper said. "My people have made a decision. We are establishing a new saying, a proverb that will be taught to our children. When death comes for you, pray the Deathworlders hear your call." Diana felt emotion catch in her throat. For a species to honor humanity and their cultural wisdom was a gift beyond measure. "Elder, I don't know what to say. That's beautiful." "It is truth," Whisper replied. "My people will never be warriors. We will never be strong in the way you are strong, but we no longer fear strength itself. We have learned to distinguish between the knife that threatens and the knife that protects. Humanity is the knife that protects." After the call ended, Diana stood quietly for a moment, thinking about how far they had come. The humans who had fought their way into the galactic community with blood and fire were now being called protectors. It was strange and humbling and terrifying all at once. "Captain, you should see this," Alex called from his station. "We're picking up chatter on the restricted frequencies. There's a major diplomatic incident brewing." Diana reviewed the intelligence reports. Several powerful species in the Galactic Council were forming what they called the Traditional Alliance. They claimed it was to preserve council authority and prevent vigilante justice, but everyone knew what it really was. It was a coalition of species uncomfortable with humanity's growing influence and the alliance network forming around them. "They're scared," Liam observed. "The old power structures are breaking down. Species that used to be prey are finding their voice, and it's changing everything. Let them be scared," Beth said from engineering. "Maybe if the powerful ones feel threatened, they'll understand how the weak have felt for centuries." Before Diana could respond, alarms sounded across the bridge. A distress call, this one from a species called the Quiet Ones. They were being attacked by raiders near the border of Council space, 3 ships well-armed, targeting a civilian research station. "Time to intercept?" Diana asked. 18 minutes at maximum speed, Liam calculated. Though that'll push the engines past safe limits. Diana did not hesitate. "Do it. Alex, battle plan. Beth, I need every bit of speed you can give me. Ray, prep medical for incoming casualties." The Guardian surged forward, its engines burning bright enough to be seen across the system. This was what the ship was built for. This was what humanity did best. They heard the call and they came. 16 minutes later, the Guardian dropped into normal space, already firing. The 3 raider ships had been so focused on their helpless targets that they never saw the human warship coming until it was too late. One ship exploded before they could even raise shields. The second managed to get off a few shots before Alex's precise fire crippled its engines. The third tried to run. "Liam, open a channel to that fleeing ship," Diana ordered. When the channel opened, Diana's voice was ice cold. "This is Captain Diana Ross of the UESN Guardian. You have 5 seconds to surrender or be destroyed. Your choice." The raiders surrendered. Within an hour, the research station was secured, casualties were being treated, and the raiders were locked in the Guardian's brig awaiting trial. The Quiet Ones, who had believed themselves abandoned, were safe. News of the rescue spread quickly, as it always did. The Guardian's rapid response became another data point in the growing narrative. When you called for help, humans came. They came fast, they came armed, and they came angry at whoever was threatening you. 6 weeks later, Diana found herself back on Unity Station for an extraordinary session of the Galactic Council. The Traditional Alliance had called for a vote to severely restrict human military operations, claiming humanity was becoming too aggressive and needed to be controlled. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species. The debate had been going on for hours, with both sides making their arguments. Finally, it was time for the human representative to speak. Admiral Grace Warner took the floor. "You want to restrict us," Grace said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You want to control us. You want us to ask permission before we save lives. Some of you have called us barbarians, warmongers, a threat to galactic peace. And you know what? You're partially right. We are dangerous, we are aggressive. We do respond to threats with overwhelming force." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But ask yourselves this. Who do you call when pirates attack your shipping lanes? Who responds when slavers raid your colonies? Who stands between the weak and those who would prey upon them? It's not the Council. It's not your diplomats and mediators. It's us. It's always been us." A representative from the Traditional Alliance stood. "You prove our point, Admiral. You act without authority, without oversight. What happens when you decide someone is a threat? What happens when human judgment replaces council law?" Grace smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "You want to know what happens? I'll tell you. The species under our protection stop being victims. The predators who have operated freely for decades suddenly face consequences. The balance of power shifts away from those who have abused it. That's what happens. And yes, it makes you uncomfortable. Good. You should be uncomfortable. The old way was broken." Another voice spoke up, this one from a species called the Dreamers. "But where does it end? Today you protect civilians. Tomorrow, you might use that same power to invade, to conquer, to impose your will." Diana, standing beside Grace, stepped forward to answer. "It ends where it has always ended for humans. We protect those who ask for protection. We fight those who prey on innocence. We don't conquer because we have no desire to rule over others. We have our own worlds, our own lives. We just refuse to stand by while others suffer when we have the power to help." Elder Whisper requested permission to speak, and the speaker granted it. The Pale One's voice was stronger now, more confident. "I have heard much debate about controlling humanity, but I have not heard anyone offer an alternative. If you restrict the humans, who will protect species like mine? The Council has failed us repeatedly. Only humanity has proven willing to risk their lives for strangers." A cascade of voices joined him, representatives from species under human protection, all saying variations of the same thing. The Council had failed them. Humanity had not. They would rather trust the dangerous humans than the safe bureaucrats who had abandoned them. The vote was called. The Traditional Alliance's proposal to restrict humanity was defeated, but not by much. The galaxy remained divided, but the balance had shifted. Humanity's growing network of protected species gave them legitimacy and political power they had never possessed before. As the session ended, Grace and Diana walked through the corridors of Unity Station. They passed representatives from dozens of species, some nodding in respect, others looking away in fear or disapproval. "We made a lot of enemies today," Diana observed. "We also made something more important," Grace replied. "We made a choice about who we want to be. The galaxy already feared us. Now some of them understand why that fear can be a blessing instead of a curse." They reached the docking bay where the Guardian waited. Diana looked at her ship, thought about her crew, and felt a sense of purpose settle over her like a comfortable weight. This was what humanity would be. Not conquerors, not tyrants, protectors, guardians, the shield between darkness and light. A young ensign approached carrying a datapad. "Captain Ross, we've received 7 new requests for aid, all from species outside current Council protection." Diana took the pad and reviewed the requests. Mining colony under threat, trade convoy being stalked by pirates, research outpost that had gone silent under suspicious circumstances, colony of refugees being harassed by their former oppressors, each one a cry for help that nobody else would answer. "Plot courses to each location," Diana ordered. "Contact the other ships in our response group. Coordinate coverage so we can address all 7 situations. Nobody waits for help any longer than absolutely necessary." The ensign saluted and hurried off to carry out the orders. Grace watched her go and then turned to Diana with an approving nod. You know this is just the beginning, Grace said. More species will ask for help. More enemies will emerge from those who benefited from the old way. This will never get easier. Diana smiled, the expression of someone who had accepted a burden willingly. Nothing worth doing ever is. But that's fine. Humans have never chosen the easy path. We chose the right one. Let the galaxy fear us if they must, but let them also know that when they call, we will answer. Always. She boarded the Guardian, ready for whatever came next. Behind her, the galaxy continued its endless dance of politics and power. But somewhere out there, someone was in danger. Someone was calling for help. And humanity would hear that call. The Deathworlders were coming, and the innocent would be saved.